And welcome to She Gets Real. And we are here to introduce our topic of today of why affirmations don't work and what you should do instead. And I'm Janine Sonsi, and
I am Tirza Elise, and I am so excited that we are launching this. It's going to be a weekly event, and you are going to want to get involved because we talk raw and we talk real, and we are real women with real solutions, opening the doors for real breakthroughs, and it's going to be exciting.
And we have real stories too, but you'll have to watch us to find out what they are. So let's jump into it, Tirza.
Let's do it. So why do affirmations not work? Because every time you flip through your reels, there's somebody else telling you that today's affirmation is really important. So people believe and are believing more and more that these affirmations are going to bring about what they state. And then they feel frustrated after, like, why isn't this working?
Isn't it just a matter of if I keep telling myself in my head something, then I'll believe it and it'll work. Isn't that
yes to a point? Yes, to a point, that's true. But there's a deeper science that's often missed, don't you think? And well, we know there's a deeper science that is missed. And if you tell yourself something for 4 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it is, but you walk away and your subconscious says, oh, well, that's not actually true, ha, ha, ha. And it's quietly laughing at you in the background for making an effort to manifest something in your life, then you're never going to change what your brain believes. And what your brain believes is what it makes you create. It sets about creating what it believes you want.
Whereas what's actually driving your behavior and your thoughts is your inner beliefs. And these are the beliefs that you have adopted throughout your life. And there will be things that have happened in your life that have made you make a decision, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm not going to be like that, so I won't do that. Now, I can give you an example of myself. When I was about 8 years old, I went to my mother and told her that I'd had a fight with the girl down the road. Now, this girl down the road was a very selfish, only child. And I knew that then. And I had a fight with her. And my mother turned to me and said, oh, Janine, what did you do to cause that? And I was just deflated. I'm like, well, nothing. It wasn't my fault. So I made a decision in that moment that I wasn't going to share how things were for me. I wasn't going to share my vulnerabilities.
Because you didn't want to get blamed for something that was out of context. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I wanted to protect myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to put myself out there if there's no one there to meet me and to support me. So I became super, 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 super independent. And
independent, probably to the detriment, like the more less wanted type of independence.
Yeah,
which it's like the other adjectives for.
Yeah, it's that one where you have a bit of a barrier and go, no, I can do it. It's all right. I can do it. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But you're not fine.
The Ross Geller, I'm fine, from Friends, when everyone always laughs about it, right? Do you ever watch Friends?
I have watched Friends a lot, but I have a different.
And he sits there and Ross is like upset that he's broken up with Rachel once again or something. Yeah. They're like, how are you, mate? And he's like, I'm fine. And then by the end of the show, he's like, I'm fine.
I have a really good definition, which is a little bit naughty for fine. What it really means is up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Well, yes. And I think there's various, spectrums of that, sort of I'm fine. But it was interesting. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and she was saying that she'd done some meditation. And in her meditation, the guided voice was saying, just go into a space where you find a happy place in your childhood. But because she'd had a lot of turmoil in her life, She was like, well, I really couldn't find a happy place. And I said, well, why were you going into this attempt to find a happy place? She's like, well, because I'm doing an affirmation right now to say that I am happy, I am well, I am strong, and I'm content. But the deep side of it was that actually she's saying it again and again, but not feeling it. But it's because deep down, her brain is struggling to find what that happy means. Similarly, in your story,
Yeah.
you know, you might be saying, I am confident, I'm strong, I name my worth, I am wanted as an expert or a professional in my field, but your brain is trying to find a relation to those words, and all it finds is, I have to be quiet and get on quietly with it in order to stay strong and be powerful. So it's not aligning.
Yeah. And with me, it was, I'm okay. I can do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
That ended up with me feeling isolated and lonely and unsupported.
Yes.
So I actually created the problem I was trying to get away from.
Exactly. And later, as you go through your life, when you're trying to work as a consultant or whatever, you can be amazing on the outside, but actually to pull a community that really wants that strength and that feeling of togetherness and openness, and you want that, but somewhere in your brain is saying, actually, the real strong Janine is the one who's quietly, silently going about things on her own.
Yeah.
You know, and it's there's a misalignment there in the two conversations within the brain. And that's where you have to go back and rewire that, which is.
Yeah. Because if I was just going with an affirmation of, you know, I am supported, I have love, I attract love into my life, I attract people to support me. I'm, you know, if I went into all these positive affirmations, I said them a lot, and I never felt any difference. I never felt supported, because that underlying limiting self-belief said, you're not supported.
And I've worked with 3 or 4 sort of experts or therapists, and talking through some of the things that I've had difficulty with in my life. And they told me, don't speak out the negative experiences. You know, if you want positivity, you need to speak out positivity. I have to admit that I'm sitting here saying I don't agree with that, because in my personal experience, I'm not going to sit here and talk it through again and again and again and do hours and hours of, you know, regurgitating all the hell. But no, I'm going to the limiting belief that I have, or to the belief that my brain thinks is the strong one, the one that keeps me safe from getting ridiculed by my mother, or the one that keeps me safe from, I don't know, not having income, or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to that experience. I'm going to go to that particular situation like you just did now. You're going to say, my mother told me that it was probably my fault or my actions that made me have this altercation with this girl.
Yeah.
And you say it. My behaviors caused me to be shamed or told off. My words. And you say that, and then say it to yourself. When I speak my truth, others blame me for my actions. And then your brain can realize how dumb that is. But what it's done is it's locked in a memory of that feeling.
Yes.
and that impression. So if you state it out and you realize, well, that's not true. You know, when I state my feelings, when I state my truth, other people around will immediately think it's my fault or shame me for it. No, not true. You know, and we've grown up and we've matured, so we can put a pin in the balloon that's living rent-free in our brain of this impression that we have of ourselves. And then we make space for the new neuron to reconnect.
And that's actually the work that you and I both do with women clients, is take them back to recognize when this belief happened.
Yeah.
And then change it for them and help them recognize that that's no longer true. It's not true for the person they are now. It's not true for the life they live now. And it's not true for all they've achieved.
That's right.
And then once they get that and go, oh my God, you're so right, then we can start doing affirmations after that to change the behavior.
Yeah. And what do we do when we feel like we've recognized that the thought is wrong? We've said it a few times and we realize how daft and stupid it is. But then we find ourselves still having behaviors that are evoked from that belief. And we know that it can take up to 700 plus times to reaffirm and rewire, because it probably took a lot of times to wire that behavior in, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to rewire it out.
Yes.
What do we do with those, that frustration when the behaviors are happening again and again and again?
Get a really good coach.
Yes, that's true.
That's true. We can do some things for ourselves. and affirmations are one of the tools you can use to help change the rewiring in your brain and to start growing the new neural pathways that belong to the new belief, and then help create new behaviors.
Yeah.
What's another thing that you would do?
Well, one thing I really like to go back to is play. And I think if we think about the fear that we have of stepping out of what everyone is called the comfort zone, which effectively is our current known space of our personality, our possibilities of what we can achieve and do and be. In order to do something new, we need to explore. We have to be creative, get a bit playful. And that can be very fearful for people, especially when we're talking about our own characteristics or our own habits. But getting yourself into a situation where maybe you have to trial that new behavior and that new personality trait that you're trying to evoke. For example, let's say naming your worth, or let's go back to your example of expressing how you feel. We want to start in a really safe environment first. And sometimes even good friends are safer than family, right?
I would go very often for me, but anyhow.
Say that again?
I'd go very often they're safer for me than a family. But
Well, you can more easily get ridiculed, but, especially if you warn your friends, like, I'm really learning this new trait. I want to quote my worth more. So I'm going to raise my prices. So I'm going to start naming how much I'm worth in my friendship circle when I'm out for a drink or when I'm talking to people about what I do.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to make me feel weird because of my wired in neurons that I'm trying to unwire and redesign. So if I fumble about or if I don't say it with confidence, I am playing through this new personality that I am helping my brain to form with me. And that's a really good one. It's scary and it's fearful for people, but if you can, start to think about the characteristics that you want to have and don't have, and then think of safe spaces where you can play through that kind of characteristic or those actions or those words or that personality. That's a really good tactic as well.
That is really good. And I think another one is journaling or writing yourself a letter, but actually handwrite it. Don't type on the computer, because it's the act of handwriting that actually triggers the brain.
Yeah.
And will create more belief there. So
and don't use ChatGPT to tell you what to think.
Absolutely not. Definitely not ChatGPT. It has to come from your heart, actually, not your head.
Yes.
So it's important that you let yourself just write whatever it is that comes to you. It's called creative writing. Let it flow in a journal or in a letter to yourself or both. And write. Then you can start saying, well, I believe I am. I am good enough. I don't have to tell myself I'm not. So I am good enough, and I can do this, and I can do that. And whatever it is you're facing, whatever is that fear that you're facing, write it all out from the positive side.
Beautiful. I can actually see a real 3-stepped strategy there. So you start with the affirmation, because you can actually tell yourself what you're going to believe about yourself now, or a new possibility.
Yes.
Then you're going to plan situations where you can play through that and trial it and maybe make a little bit of a mess of yourself or fall on your face here or there, but you're practicing because you're actually enacting it in real life. So your brain starts to understand how this could look. And then when you sit in your bed at night or you're at home having your evening routine, you pull out your journal and you write how you felt in that playful situation or in that perhaps practice or, real life situation, how you felt, what you didn't like, what you felt good about, and then what you're going to do next. And that's a really kind of relevant journaling to be doing.
Yeah. I would put another step in between the affirmations and the doing it with other people. I would write it out in your journal first. So you practice saying it in writing, and then you practice saying it to other people. So you're saying it to yourself first.
Nice.
And then you say it to other people, and then you write, wow, how did that work for me today?
Yeah, really beautiful. Really powerful. I think that would really make a difference. Like if you're really stuck with something and you're just frustrated that it's just not changing, those might be the really strong 4 steps to go through with really embedding a new habit. It's similar to what we used to do in schools with kids, right? What's it called?
Yeah.
Write, cover, look and say, or say, write, look and cover when you're doing your spelling words. You copy it off the board and then you cover it over and you try and write it yourself. And then I can't remember, but there's like a 4-step to learn how to spell a word,
Well, you were the teacher, so you remember.
Cover, write, and say. That's what it was. Look at the board, write it, cover it, and say it, and then repeat it. But it's a similar process to just teaching your brain a new skill.
Yeah, but as we said before, the first and most critical step is identifying what the limiting self-belief is, and then changing it.
That's right.
And I might joke about saying getting a really good coach, but seriously, most people will need help to do that, because you need somebody else's eyes to look at your story and go, so is that when you decided that you'd be independent and you didn't need to tell anyone, you didn't need to share with anyone else?
Yeah.
Like, yes. And they would say, well, how has that played out in your life? Oh, well, it's meant that I've never had a best friend. I am telling the truth here. I've never had a best friend forever. And I don't really grow close to a lot of people. They have to be very special. And they said, oh, do you think that's because you decided not to open up and be vulnerable and share when you're 8 years old? I went, oh, yes, that does make sense. And are you that same person? Are you stronger now than when you were 8? Oh, yes. And can you cope with being vulnerable in front of other people? Well, yes. So now you don't have to believe that it's bad to be vulnerable in front of others. No, because I can be safe.
Yes.
Wow, let's go into the God, I thought it was that easy.
Exactly. And what's something else that I do on my course and my work with people is I actually make a quadrant of 4. So family, friends and colleagues, mentors and teachers, family, friends, colleagues, and people in the workplace, and then teachers and mentors, because those people too have a very different level of influence, right? Yeah. So if my children say something to me, or my mother says something to me, it's going to go deeper, maybe, or affect me in a different way than if a colleague said something to me. So again, you can really look at how, and often, for example, my mother used to say to me all the time, oh, Tirza, whenever you walk in the room, everyone just looks your way and they have to shut up and listen to what you say when you start talking. And I think she was trying to give me a compliment, but as a young girl, I heard it as you're loud and take over the room in an abrasive way. So
Yeah.
for many years, and they used to say something about my sun sign, right? I would say, oh, I'm born in March. And my mother would be like, and that's why she's the way she is. So it's these kind of things that you sort of are like, they're wired in so deeply, but they come out in a way that you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that, or, oh, I just need to step quietly at the back and not. But it's so hard to be a different person than your personality and your character, especially if it's something that's quite attractive or nice. And then you've got this kind of niggling thing on the side. So I have to go back and say, well, actually, it came from my mother when I was a 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old child, similar to your example. So, of course, the roots are so deep, rather than some colleague who said, oh, yes, Tears is always the one who has to step up first. Then you're sort of like, okay, well, one, you're an adult, so you can measure it out differently. Yes, I am that person, but I've internalized, I'm confident about it now.
Exactly. This is what we do. We grow and evolve in our lives. I mean, the one I remember my mum saying all the time was, oh, Janine, don't be so proud of yourself. And so that I was like, so I wasn't allowed to be proud of what I did. I wasn't allowed to build myself up. So therefore, I, grew up with this. Like, I'm going to be. I thought I was invisible. I didn't think anyone. I thought there was nothing remarkable about me that anyone would remember.
And that's just so sad that that's what's wired in. Yeah,
I know, and it took me, 25 years of personal development, courses and
get rid of it. Yeah,
everything else. And
so we know there's a quicker way. There's a quicker way and a simpler way. You don't need 25 years. But I think also, to be fair to our mothers, we've just sat here and, defamed our mothers a little, but I'm currently watching Outlander again because series 6 is out, by the way. Awesome.
I've already watched it.
Okay. Well, the new series is out, series 6. And if you look at the way that they rear their young and speak to their young, and also the dichotomy between men and women back then, it was very much rooted in our upbringing as what was manners, as what was prudent, what was right, what was godly. So it's just so ingrained in tradition, and I have a sneaky feeling that just habitually or out of instinct, your mother may not have said that if you were a boy. And that's horrible to say. It's horrible to say because I'm sure she didn't even mean that. I know my mother probably wouldn't have either, but it's just so wired in. And I'm not sitting here blaming male or female. It's just the tradition and the culture that has evoked these types of reactions, especially from those in a generation long before us, right?
Yeah.
So it's
and
a really
another
big...
one of our talks will delve into the differences between the socialization of men and women and difference in
our pride, our, status of achievement and things. Yeah. But it's something to bear in mind that it was just so wired in, and it's rooted into us from generations, especially.
It was wired into my mother. It was wired into her mother. And, I came from a very Christian line, my parents, their parents. And it's, one of the 7 sins is pride. Pride is one of the 7 sins. So it's like they were brought up to believe it was a bad thing. So therefore, that's what they taught us. So it's not a matter of blame. It's just like a matter of, oh, I understand how that works.
Exactly. But what an amazing set of strategies we're leaving our listeners with. I believe we ambitiously said we would achieve loads in 30 minutes. I think we have, but we could carry on for another 2 hours, I propose.
Easy.
But, just to recap for anyone who's just wiring in, our set of 4 strategies, well, sort of 5. First one, identify the limiting belief. But that's often because you're frustrated with a characteristic or a behavior that you don't like. So that's your current reality, right? So I'm just not putting the right price for things. I'm working too many hours for not enough money, exchanging time for money in a poor way. So this is the characteristic you want to get rid of. So you need to go back, spend some time in meditation or in journaling or in something to identify what's the block. Where did it start?
Yep.
And then what were the things we said we would do? We would name it, say out where it came from, do that sentence of whatever someone said. Then we're going to write down the affirmation of what we believe about ourselves and what characteristic we know we have.
In the first person.
In the first person.
I am this. We will
Yes.
own it.
I confidently quote my worth at whatever per hour. Yeah. And that's what we do. And then we practice or we play through confidently having that belief and that characteristic. And we do that within our friendship group, maybe within our family. And as we get more confident with it, we do it with strangers or with possible clients.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day of playing through that, we journal what we learned, how we felt, what was hard, what was challenging, what we were successful at, and maybe what we're going to do next. That's amazing.
Yeah. I know. And we just came up with that. Hey. Because
mic drop, tell you that for free.
Well, it is.
But it really does. It really is a method that works. It's a tried and proven to success.
We do know it, and I think now it could be a good time to plug our services, because that's exactly what I help women do. I work with mature professional women to help them recognize their limiting self-beliefs, reframe them into positive self-fulfilling beliefs, and then integrate that in and implement it in their lives so that they can step into their true feminine power.
Absolutely. So I'm not sure how we do that, but I am She Exclusive and you are Reinvention Alchemist. I guess our links will be below.
Yes.
Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we're linked to our LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. So you can contact us there. We both have programs where we support people on short-term basis to do a bit of brainstorming and some take and win strategies, or a much longer, deeper process of becoming confident, professional, successful fempreneurs and, well, just well-settled, happy women. So you can find our programs, I guess, on our bios that are underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll put comments on this to give more details. And yeah. I mean, my website is getrealcommunication.com. And
brilliant. Mine is she-exclusive.com.
Well, very exclusive, my dear. And for anyone who's been watching with us, for anyone who is watching afterwards, I hope you really enjoyed our session, and we enjoyed delivering it.
Yeah, it's wonderful to converse with you. We always have something great. We go deep every time. We go deep and we go practical, and we take stuff away every time. So
yeah. Really. So watch out for us live at 4 p.m. Central European Summertime next Thursday, every Thursday, or watch us afterwards in the replay.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, have a wonderful afternoon. And if no one has told you today, you are beautiful.
And fabulous.
And exclusive.
And you can get real. Yes.
Brilliant. Well, have a wonderful afternoon. And I'm going to go and enjoy the sunshine now because it is gorgeous outside. I hope you are enjoying some form of sunshine too. And if not, create it yourself.
Be the sunshine in your life.
That's it.
Bye.
That's
See you next
Bye.
week.
See you next week.